Rev up your engines!
Sean W. says, Scotty, love your vids. I bought a 96 Toyota 4Runner, 3.4 V6 with 128,000 miles. Had all the enforcers for oil changes, belts, oil changes every 3. What can I do to make it last as long as possible? Well, keep doing that. 128,000 miles is low mileage for one of those that's a 96. And that's a classic vehicle. Just keep taking care of it like that. It's got the V6 engine with a timing belt in it because it's an old one. So I would definitely change the timing belt now, not just because of mileage, but because of age. It's rubber timing belt. It'll crack. I changed the water pump too and the timing belt tensioner. You never know. I had a customer, one of those had 450,000 miles on it. They can last a long time. Just baby it and take care of it. Those are solid built trucks, especially back in 96. The frames were solid. Everything about them were solid built trucks. Kevin Giver, I bought a 96 Saturn SL1 with 23,000 miles. I wonder if they're dependable cars. I'm usually a Honda or Toyota fan. That thing's old as hills. I'm assuming you did not pay much money for it. I've had people buy those cars for $500, $1,000 and drive them for 4 or 5 years and not have to spend too much money fixing them. If that really has 23,000 miles on it, it can still be quite dependable. I got customers with those things that 150,000 miles and they're still running okay if you take care of them. If that really is the real mileage, you didn't pay much, you might have actually gotten a really good deal. Sure, they don't make them anymore, but truth be told, the 96s were better made than the older ones when they finally went bankrupt because GM, even though they called it Saturn, GM owned it, kept forcing them to make them junkier and junkier. They were kind of jealous that the Saturns were selling good and their GM cars weren't, so they ended up destroying the whole company and then they just shut the whole thing down. But those old ones were actually better made than the ones near the end when they stopped making them. Betchas! How is a Lexus ES 350 2019? Well, they're beautiful cars, and they cost an awful lot of money. The only problem that I find is Toyota has had problems. Higher speed transmissions, the 8-speed transmissions and above, they've had some problems. And they're working on them. I don't know if they perfected them. And you're not going to know whether a 2019 car is that good now, because it's 2019, till it's been out for a few years. That's the big reason I buy used cars. Bought my wife's Lexus ES 300, and it was 12 years old. Only had 60,000 miles. But in those 12 years, they had a history of no problems at all. And it only had 60,000 miles, so I bought it. It might be the last car I ever have to buy her. I would never buy a new car of any sort, especially since they have had problems with the transmissions and the other ones. It's not like they fell apart like a Chrysler Fiat. Toyota claims they got software fixes. Well, I'd wait until a few years down the line myself to see if they really do work fine and they don't have any residual problems. Because a lot of times, they do the software over and then a year or two later, that didn't work right, and they get even worse as the transmissions wear. So I'd wait on that one. Lukey's Y2K says, I got an '09 Hyundai Sonata. It's leading coolant right where the water inlet meets the water housing in the dash. Could I use a sealer on it? You could try, but here's the problem. That inside part where it goes in is all cheap plastic crap. It's a 2009. So it's an 11-year-old vehicle. And on those Hyundais, that cheap plastic crap, when it cracks, generally means you have to replace it. And on that situation, you got to take the frickin' dash of the car apart because the hose fits in there, yes, but the part it fits into is inside the dash, and you got to take all that apart to change it. It's a royal pain in the butt. That's why I hate the use of plastic crap like that. It's just cheaper to make, that's all. It's not better, it's worse. When they used to make all those valves and stuff out of metal, hey, they'd last for an awful long time, but you got hot coolant with all kinds of chemicals in it. Over time, plastic's going to do what? Crack and leak, and when it does, you got to replace it. And it's bad enough when it's on the outside, sitting in the engine bay, where you got to pay $300 for some piece of plastic crap with valves in it, but when it's hiding inside the dash, it's 10 times worse. Jay Brown says, Scotty, 2007 Honda Accord, 57,000 miles. Wow, low mileage. With slow steering rack leak. Fluid's relatively dirty. Should I change it to prevent a further leak? You got to use Honda fluid because they're very particular. I would change all the fluid, and I would add 3 ounces of AT205 reseal. It can help it from leaking, and a lot of times it will. Now, if it gets to really leak, yeah, you're going to have to replace the rack, and it's a gigantic pain in the rear end. There's no arguing that, but Hondas just have a history of weak leaking racks on those things, and the dirt does it. Make sure you get it nice and clean and try the AT205 reseal. Pray it fixes it. I've seen them fix it sometimes because it's awful low mileage. Volkswagen is now supporting the old Beetles by making making an electric conversion motor assembly that you can put on a classic Beetle when they made them, so they actually lasted a long time. They're not talking about the price because that's being done by another company in Stuttgart, Germany. They are already converting the classic Volkswagens, and they're having a reasonable amount of horsepower in them. These things with an electric motor, they're having like 91 horsepower, and they have a pretty good range because they were small, light cars. That's what electric cars are basically designed for, smaller vehicles. And there's tons of classic Volkswagens still going on. You could convert it. Like I said, they're not giving the price tag yet. And since they're made in Stuttgart, I'm sure they're going to be really expensive, and it's going to be, you know, a rich man's toy for the time being. But when they start coming out with these kits en masse, and they make more of them, I'm sure other people, the Chinese will probably start copying it, and you can buy a Chinese-made conversion kit for a lot less money than what the Germans are making it for. But really not a bad idea, because those old Beetles, hey, there's lots of them still rolling along, small vehicle. Why not convert a small vehicle to electric instead of making these big things that are never going to go all that far because they're too big and they got to pull the heavy battery? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.